You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. Tonight's story isn't from a camper or a curious tourist. It's from a Michigan hunter who knew every sound the woods could make until something shattered the silence. 3 voices, bone-chilling screams, and footprints unlike anything he'd ever seen. Alone in Deadhead Swamp under a sky full of stars, Nate faced something ancient, and it left him forever changed. This isn't folklore, it's not a misidentified animal, it's a first-hand account from someone who knows the forest better than most. And this is the story of Nate and the night Michigan swamp screamed back, so stay with us. Hi, Bigfoot Society. I've got the privilege of talking to Nate today. Nate is a listener of the show from out there in the great state of Michigan, and he's got some interesting things to share today. He's a hunter and an outdoorsman as well, but welcome to the show today, Nate. How's it going?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I always enjoy talking to those that are hunters and outdoorsmen. You all have a very interesting way of experiencing what happened out there, and I'm just thankful for you coming on the show. So I'm going to make sure that you have the time to share what you need to today, Nate. So I'll go ahead and pass things over to you, and we'll go from there.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate it, Jeremiah. So I guess it goes, I believe it was 2001, and I would go to the northern lower peninsula in Michigan in Roscommon State Game Area near Houghton Lake, Roscommon County. And my family, we'd been going there off and on for many years. We would go there for usually rough grouse hunting and a little duck hunting and stuff like that, and occasional bow hunting for deer. And I was there, I believe it was the first weekend. The grouse season opens on September 15th, and so it would be the first full weekend that was available for the open. And I drove there and was there Saturday and basically spent the day walking around in the swamp. I think the people of the neighborhood call it the Dead Horse or Deadhead Swamp. It's a pretty big area. It doesn't have any roads in it right there. It's kind of basically on the west side of the freeway. And I drove a few miles back in there in the area where I camp. There's a clearing that I like camp in. Maybe 2 or 3 miles back in onto the state game area. And I spent the day walking around basically just looking for birds, and there wasn't much going on. It was a little hot and a little dry. And I got back Saturday evening, and had something to eat and was just hanging out by the fire and went to bed. I was pretty tired, probably walked 6-8 miles there in the afternoon and maybe a few in the morning, probably total 10-15 miles circling around. So I went to bed early right before dark, and I woke up sometime in the middle of the night. Something woke me up, and I've never woke up where I are shocked awake, I guess you could say, where you get scared, like you're scared awake. I woke up, something woke me up and spooked me, and I sat there, and there was something screaming outside of my tent, really loud. And I've been going up there for a long time, been all over Michigan, been in the UP, and all over the place. And it wasn't, the volume on it was really loud is what scared me at the first, concerned me. And it was, after I listened, it went on for quite some time. So as I listened to it, I sat there. Initially, you're frightened over it. And, and then I kind of calmed down with it while I was going, and it continued to scream. And the volume was just like, it was ear splitting. And the duration, it was so long and loud, like it was. I've heard, foxes or bobcats. And, a fox will scare you pretty good. They make quite the noise. But this was just like whatever was young. It was too big. It couldn't. No animal that right out of Michigan seemed like would have the lungs, just the capacity to make a sound that was that loud or that long. But it screamed maybe 5 or 6 times, real loud, maybe a few minutes apart. And then I guess it was probably in this clearing I'm in, maybe 100 yards across. The woods are maybe 30 or 40 yards from my tent. I was up in the tent with the window slightly open, looking out. It was dark. I couldn't see anything. But it sounded like it was just inside the wood line from my tent, the one, because it was screaming on and off. But then another one would scream. There would be a different scream that would come from maybe 150 yards down the wood line. This one would scream a couple times, and like this one, the other one would answer, and you could tell because they were two different sounds. The first one was real shrieky, like high pitched, almost like a woman screaming, but like it would have to be it wasn't as high pitched as like, I'd say like like a woman screaming, but it had that shrill sound to it, and it was long and very loud. And the other one would do a similar scream, but it sounded more deep in tone. They screamed back and forth with each other for I don't know how long. I was pretty amped up in the tent and couldn't tell. Time probably seemed like it'd take forever, but maybe for I'd say 45 minutes or an hour, they kind of back and forth vocalizing, like they never really moved. But then a third one would come down. The clearing I'm in is probably 200 or 300 yards long. And at the far end, it would come back, but it sounded like it was a much more deeper tone. It wasn't as shrill. And it was huge. It sounded like whatever it was, it had lungs like a horse. It was as loud as it could be. And just real deep tone, like whoa, like that. When it would end, it would like hop, 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 hop. It would make some kind of weird, like almost like gibberish at the end of it. It would hop, 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 this weird noise, but it would only answer periodically. So the one closest to me was screaming, was making the most noise, and I was afraid to get out there. I wasn't getting out of the tent. I was in there with a shotgun loaded, and like I didn't know what it was. I've been in the dark, been scared by raccoons. I ran into a few things. But this was like you could feel it, and it was so loud it would make you shake. Like it literally. I've never been that scared about something like that. And the one closest to me would make the shrieking scream for a few seconds, 7, 8, 10 seconds maybe, and then it would stop, and the other one would answer, and it would scream, and then what I assume was the biggest one, it sounded like, at the farthest away, he would only answer whatever. It would only make a call every 5, 6 times. These things would talk to each other, basically. It sounded like, it's like they were two were yelling back and forth at each other, and the one at the end was telling them to be quiet. I mean, that's what it was like. It was just wah, 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 real loud, wah, And finally, the one with the deep voice, it stopped. It quit making any racket. It stopped. And the one closest to me would call a little less frequently, and the second one, I would say, was maybe 150, 200 yards away from me at most. It seemed like it only made a few noises, and then like it cut out. And the one that was just inside the tree line for my tent, like you could almost hear it, like it would scream, and then it was losing like no one was answering. Like it would be a little less and a little less, and finally it was like it just made like these little grunts and stuff. And kind of just cut out, and then it stopped in entirety. So that went on for quite a long time tonight, and I was pretty weirded out by it. I'm not gonna lie. I was pretty nervous in the tent. So I stayed out. I stayed up till it was broad daylight, peeking out the window. Never saw anything, and then when it was daylight, I finally opened the tent and looked around against it, and I just literally threw everything in, pulled the poles out of my tent, threw everything on top of the tent, folded the tent up, and set it in the back of my pickup, and I bailed out of there and was gone. Like I left. So if you drive down out of there, you go down the 2-track a ways, and it goes, and there's a spot where it splits a big swamp before you get back to the Nelsville Road where the freeway's at. I drove down that road in the swamp, and I stopped, and I sat in the truck, and I thought for a minute, like, what was that last night? Like, I have no idea. I was just sitting there kind of like, never heard anything like that, and I was pretty freaked out about it. So I was sitting there thinking, I was like, I'm like, if I don't go back and look, like, I'm going to wonder forever what that was. Like, I didn't think it was a good idea to go back. I don't know. But I sat there for a minute and thought, well, I'll go back with the truck, and I'll drive back, and I won't drive all the way back to my campsite. You take a couple forks, and it goes through a great big clearing, and then the 2-track goes into the woods, and then it reaches, and it forks again, and then the clearing I was in is on the left fork. So I stopped in the main, larger clearing, parked my truck, turned around so it was facing back out the way I came in the field, got out, loaded my shotgun, got everything, put my binoculars on, and I walked down the 2-track, and I was just going to walk down the 2-track back to where I was at, and just nice and slow. And as I was walking, I was looking in the bushes. I was going real slow, almost like I was still hunting deer, just trying to, make sure I didn't walk into anything. I was just looking to see what was in front of me. Pretty nervous about it, I'm not going to lie. And I got down the sand in the 2-track, and I looked down, and I saw there's like where the 2-track, say the 2-track goes, there's basically like your 2 lanes where the tires have wore all the grass and the sod and stuff off, and it's just sandy dirt. And then in the center, there's that little bit of grass that goes in the middle. There was a track, and I could see there was a footprint track of something that had 5 toes, but I couldn't see the whole track because it had stepped on the grass and the toes were in the sand. And I looked at it, and then as I looked up, there was another one that was kind of the same way, like it was walking down the center of the 2-track where it was grassy. And I go, that's a big bear. I'm like, holy smokes. I go, that's a huge bear track. I'm looking at it, and I got a size 12 boot. Like I can only see like basically toes where it's walking down there, but I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, those are, round toes. I'm like, that's got to be I'm thinking it's a bear. Put my boot behind it, and it's substantially wide. The toes, everything, and I'm like, man, that's a huge bear paw. Like, I'm like, that's a black bear. He's a beast. I'm thinking like, man, there's a big bear. So as I'm walking, I'm following the tracks. They kind of go down the center of the 2-track. There's about 5, 6, 7 tracks, but I'm noticing they cut out onto the sand, and they're out of the grass, and they're actually in the sand. When I walk up to the one in the sand, I'm like, okay, there's the toes and everything, but there's no claws on it. And then I look up, and there's another track in front of it, but it's 4 foot farther up. So I'm like, oh, this bear is, I'm thinking he's moving. So I'm looking at it, and look at the track, and like the track is long. So I'm looking at myself, and I'm thinking like, coyote and stuff, when they walk, they'll put their foot in the same hole. So the coyote almost look like he's walking on 2 feet if he's in a little bit of snow or something like that. They step in something in the, this bear is hustling, and he stepped in his track. But I'm looking at the track, and I'm looking at the tracks going along there, and I'm like, I kind of don't see a second set of toes in them. So I'm looking at the thing, and I go down, and there's like 5, 6, 7, maybe in total, let's say there was 45 or 50 tracks down the section I could see on the 2-track. There was quite a few tracks. But as I follow the first 6, 8, 10 tracks, they're all 4 or 5 foot apart, it's big stride. I'm looking at them, and I'm like, I'm looking at them like I'm not making sure that I don't get I don't see a second bear track in them, kind of like that stuff. I'm like, they're weird. And I get down to the last one, and then all of a sudden they're like half as long, and I can see the toes. And now the stride is like 6.5, 7 feet, maybe. It's substantially exaggerated. So I'm walking, and I'm like, is this bear like on a full lope going down the trail? And I'm looking at it, and they're short. So I follow them, and they go up to where the clearing, it forks to go to the clearing where I was camped at. So when it forks, you only have to go a little ways, and then you're into the clearing. It's, 50 or 75 yards. It's not very far when it forks left. they stopped at the fork, and then where they stopped, there was 6-8 tracks, but they were long again. They were, I could put my size 12 boot in it. And, you know, it would fit comfortably inside the track, no problem. Inch or two on each end, and, you know, heel wider than mine and everything. And I was looking at, and then like, I'm 6'2", like 230 pounds at the time. And the sand had been rained on. It was packed down pretty tough because the truck didn't leave a whole lot of tracks in it too bad. You know, it wasn't that soft. And I stopped my boot next to it, and I could leave like the cleat marks in the ground, but the track was, you know, wasn't deep, but it was twice as deep as what I could stomp in the ground with my cleats on my boots. It was pressed in pretty good. But the thing was, is they went from these short tracks to these long tracks, and then they were like kind of all pointed in different directions for a second. And I was seeing they're looking at it, and I'm like, so I walked forward and they're gone. So I turned around, looked back, and I think what it did is it ran up to that fork before where I was camped, and it stopped, and it stood around looking in a couple different directions, and then it just stepped off the trail into the woods where there's some waist-high brush. So I saw that and was like, I don't know, I'm getting out of here. So I got loaded up, walked back, got headed back to the truck, and got everything, put my stuff in the truck, and I drove out of there, and I drove home, and I, you know, didn't think much about it till, you know, I told my one buddy what I saw, and he told me I was nuts. Like, he said it was just a bear or something. I said I didn't know what it was. So I was never thought about like Sasquatch or anything along those lines. Like I was and I was a kid, you know, I knew about something, but I was 25 years old and never crossed my mind once. So kind of didn't, you know, think too much about it. After that, just thought it was something weird. Told couple of my buddies I hunt, you know, we hunt together with once in a while about it. Thought it was weird, and they thought it was pretty weird too. You know, didn't know what it was. Wasn't that turning into that big of a deal? So then, fast forward, I don't know, quite a few years, maybe 9-10 years, and I'm watching TV, and the show Monster Quest comes on, of all things. So I sat down and I was watching that, and they had a thing on there, and they had I watched it, and they were talking about some stuff, and they had some noises on there, like the Ohio howl and some other stuff, and then they played a clip of, like, I don't know if it's in the intro or it was in the episode or what, of these noises that kind of caught my attention. So just out of nowhere, never done it before, I decided to go on the computer, and I just literally searched like Sasquatch or Bigfoot, you know, or whatever, noises and stuff like that. And the Sierra sounds came up from Ron Moorhead. And I clicked on those, and when I heard a couple of those sounds, I was like, whoa, that's really similar to what I was hearing. A couple things there, not all of them, but just a couple of them were similar. And then I started researching some of the sounds and was like, whoa. But what I thought, I was like, man, I'm like, that's what I heard. Like, that's, if you amplified it loud as can be, because I know it probably doesn't record the same way, you know, when you're live, it never sounds the same when you record it. If you heard that in real life and it was loud as I heard it, like, that would be really similar. It kind of, like, you know, drew my interest. So I went a deep dive on it and started looking at all the reports from the BFRO website and stuff like that, and saw there was things around the area, and I was like, man, I don't know. But I started watching, then I started searching all kinds of stuff, everything I could find. You know, researching just anything that was on Sasquatch, stuff like that. I would look at it because I was like, I don't know. I don't think it was, maybe it was. And then I stumbled into an episode. I don't know what it was. It was a documentary or something with Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum. And he had a thing about, they had a graphic of the locomotion of the foot with the mid-tarsal brake. And I was watching it, just sitting there watching it, and like, you know, I was eating something watching it. And they showed how, like, the human foot steps off and leaves the pressure ridge. And then they showed how the foot lifts off and the supposed mid-tarsal break in a Sasquatch and leaves that further back pressure ridge. And when I looked at it, and then somewhere like that, he said when they run, they leave a half track. And I went, holy smokes. Like right there, it was like I got struck by lightning on the couch. I almost choked. And what I was eating. And I went, I saw a track line of something walking with a mid-tarsal break that started running. And that was the half track. Because when I saw the half tracks, all I could think was like, this bear's on two legs running. Like he's not leaving there's not another set of paw prints by it. So it was literally, he was walking, or he, she, whatever it was walking on its feet, flat-footed at a slow pace. And when it amplified the gait and lengthened the gait, that's where it ran for 100 yards, 75 yards. It spreaded, and that's where it left the half track. It was running on the four paw, its foot, basically. And that's where, after that, I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure that's what I encountered. I didn't see anything. I only heard something, and I found that track on the ground, but the tracks had 5 toes in a straighter line. They were wider than my foot. They had a huge heel on it. And then there was the half tracks after that where the stride got longer. And then when it stopped at the end of the trail, the stride was shorter for a couple steps. And it was the whole foot on the ground. So after that, I've never gone back there. I've thought about it. I've talked to some people around here, but it's not very easy to talk about anybody with this stuff because a lot of people give you the like, yeah, right, okay, it's hard to find some people like mine that you can discuss it with, without having that stigma on it. And when you can do that, I think it makes it a little easier. I see there's more people that have had an issue or had an experience where I was at. Wonder if this would help anybody out to let their experience be known if it was in the same area. Because I found several things in that area that were alluding to something being there. So.
Okay, that was actually one of the questions I was going to ask you is, so you've looked into that area since then and you've seen other people leaving reports in different areas?
Yeah, just a handful, but I found them. And I mean, I found stuff like from, the BFRO reports, which is fairly decent for, getting information from, I think. And then some other things for people. And then there's a couple of, Facebook pages where the people are on there sharing it about things that have gone in Michigan. And I just kind of posted something on those, just seeing if anybody would respond, how they would respond mostly, or if they, people had an experience like I had, just, get some verification because anybody I talked to about it, I've got one, maybe a pair of buddies that are actually like open-minded about it. Like they're raccoon hunters by trade, family was and stuff like that, and they hunt like I would and stuff up north used to, and they've had experiences that they can't explain, noises and stuff like that, and they're open-minded to it, so they can discuss them. But most people are pretty closed-minded to it, so it's tough. So I've found a couple people on Facebook pages that have had a similar experience in the same area, and I did find that. If I can say his name, Mr. Politis, Dave Politis.
Sure.
Who does the Missing 411. He has one about missing persons in Michigan in the National Forest, and there's a missing hunter that was lost in the Roscommon State Game area. They found his car with, I think, the door open and nothing taken out of it, and that's less than 100 yards from where I camp, and I think it was in like the same time frame.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I watch David Politis' stuff, and I really enjoy it. He has a pretty, interesting documentaries on YouTube there that he does, and posting up the different ideas. And that one caught my attention because it was from Michigan, and I know about the Quamanon National Forest and all that, and how many people go missing and stuff. And that one struck me because as I was reading it and he was explaining it, I'm pretty sure that I know exactly where that car was parked, and it was probably less than 100 yards from where I camp. He went missing, if it was the same year I was there, he went missing a month later.
Wow.
So I found that to be pretty strange.
Yeah, that kind of stuff really makes you wonder. And I was also looking through the BFRO website in the same county, and I mean, I'm seeing at least one Class A group of teenagers had a visual near Houghton Lake. This is back in 1984, which I thought was very interesting as well.
Yeah, that whole, if you go there from Houghton Lake and you go eastward and north through like Roscommon County, Ogama County, Oscoda County, all in there, and through that part of the National Forest, there's something to do with that part of the National Forest and the swampland and everything goes through there. That seems to be pretty busy. 8 sightings in Ogama County alone.
Oh, well, yeah. The people that you were, I think you said you were talking to them in these Facebook groups. Did they also hear similar things to what you heard out there? Or?
Yes, they said they had, one guy was a bow hunter, said that he lives not too far from there, and his family hunted there for, like, my family had duck hunted there for 20 years, you know. And I go the second week in October up there for a weekend and duck hunting, and, you know, it was kind of an annual thing. And then we stopped doing that a few years ago when the drought came in, and it kind of lowered the swamp levels of the water, and the ducks didn't cease to migrate there. So it kind of left alone. So I would just go there bird hunting because it would start in September and the weather would be real nice. And it was a good go camp and go walk around. And it was a spot where, you know, there was no roads to really access it. So you never ran into anybody. It was real quiet. It's one of those places when you get into it, like you can get turned around real easy and lost. And a lot of it's kind of, my one buddy that came with me the one year, he goes, I won't go back because that place is too creepy for me. It's big. There's some big old trees in there and some swamps, and you can get turned around. Like it's I get what he means by it, but it's not I've been there quite a bit, so I was comfortable with it. That was his first trip. He didn't like slogging through the brush. A couple of people I've talked to on Facebook that have spent time there, and the one gentleman said that he'd had enough experiences there, they don't go back.
Oh, wow.
That's what I believe he said. I had a pretty long chat with him on Facebook there, back and forth about it, and he said he would be willing to go back there if people wanted to go. But he said he hasn't been back there hunting in years because it was, I don't think they saw anything, but they said there was activity that made him nervous.
Yeah. Okay, I got you. If people were wanting to check it out, he would go back, but he's not going to go hunting back there type deal.
Yeah, I don't think he would go by himself.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to maybe go back by myself. But I think it'd be better to go with 2 people.
Especially in an area where, I mean, you've got a documented missing person situation like you had mentioned.
Yeah, exactly what I was thinking. Before I probably would have been up to like, for years I've been like, I need to go back and just go hang out. And I'm like, well, you know, it was 25 years ago. I don't even know if they may have, you know, forested part of it, harvested some of the trees off it. You know, when I was there, they had harvested trees on it, but it was all new growth. They hadn't done anything there. So I don't know. Like I said, I haven't been back there to scout it to even see if they're like, oh, wow, they stripped a lot of the forest off it and it's growing back, you know, new growth. You know, a lot of it was, you know, pretty wooded. There wasn't much of it that had been cut.
So I don't know if this is something you'd ever thought of before, but when you went back to look at the area again and you saw the tracks, have you ever thought about what you would have done if you actually had like a face-to-face or visual sighting during that time?
Man, I think about it probably every day.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know. I suppose, you know, it's like you run into a bear, you don't do anything, you know. You stand your ground, you face them, you back away. You know, it's a black bear, you act big. I think I don't know. Yeah, I guess it depends what kind of mood it'd be in. You know, if a grizzly's trying to eat you, what do you got to do? You play dead? Black bear's going to eat you. You got to fight back. I honestly don't know what you would do. Like, that's a whole different deal. Like, if it just showed up and was there, like, man, I'd be nothing more than like, I don't think you can get a picture of it. I don't think you can record it. it has to be. I don't think you could get if I had a camera with me, I would have took pictures of the track. I didn't. That was before. I don't even think we had flip phones yet. That was like we had the push button, push to talk Nextel phones. The yellow brick you could stick under your car tire, keep it from rolling away.
Right.
So there was no like that. And I didn't know anything. Like same thing. Like I said, I was into Bigfoot when I was a little kid. I was 6, 7, 8 years old. Remember reading the books out of the library and Bigfoot and Nessie, and like I never read anything. Like now it's like I'm like a sponge with it. I'm on Amazon. I have John Green's books, The Apes Among Us. I've read Ivan Sanderson's book, John Bindernagel's, anything Jeffrey Meldrum does, I follow up on now. And it's like, my wife thinks I'm nuts. Like my wife doesn't, I've never said a word to this about my wife. What's actually happened, what I had happened to me, I experienced, It makes me, she just thinks I'm like a Bigfoot nut. Like I just like to watch Monster Quest. She's not a skeptic. She's not. I think she self-proclaimed thing. She's like, I don't know why I know so much about Gigantopithecus. It's probably because you watch so much TV with Bigfoot in it.
That probably has something to do with it. Have you ever considered to share that story with her?
Yeah, she's not. It's not. I don't know how receptive she is to it. Like it's kind of like right. My wife's got a pretty sharp wit. She'd probably chew me up. Some things are better left unsaid. I don't know. I would share it with her. I'm not scared to, but it's like right. I've never brought up. It's kind of one of those things. Like said something. I got a couple. Like I said, I have a couple buddies that are receptive to the whole thing. Like they've had experience and stuff that they don't know, and they question it best. And the other people I've told were like, "Man, you're Looney Tunes, dude. What are you? Get out of here." Like, yeah, sure. The Easter Bunny sits on my porch, kind of thing.
Yeah, I get that stuff too.
They're of the persuasion that there's one Bigfoot, and you saw the only Bigfoot that wanders around. It's one monster. I'm like, I'm kind of lean into the thing like Meldrum and them guys, or John Bindernagel talks about, like it's an extant species.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I mean, I get some weird looks when people ask me what I do. So, but I don't care. I'm
getting to that point now. I'm getting old enough in my life that I'm kind of at the point like I give you a stink eye if you don't think it. I'm telling you, I believe. I didn't say I saw one. I just said I found some footprints and something was making racket that I can't explain. I take that position like Les Stroud does.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Like Jeff Meldrum, I'm not a believer, but I'm convinced there's something to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Have you ever considered, or has it ever crossed your mind to go out on a type of expedition type thing with other people to see if you can find evidence, or is that a line that you're comfortable not crossing?
Being a hunter like I am and stuff, like I'm not much of a hunter anymore. When I was younger, I was pretty gung ho. I wasn't much for killing animals or doing anything that, but I liked the whole aspect of the thing, like the challenge of being out and getting out, getting back, being out there. Like if I harvested an animal, that was just icing on the cake. I didn't care if I managed to harvest anything, but I was there for the experience kind of stuff. But on the way, I've learned how to operate around animals, so they don't, they don't find you. You have to be a predator. And like, I don't know, like, do you take, if it's like, depending on them, say it's a higher primate or a hominid, and it's got intelligence, it's not on par with a human being, but it's not a chimpanzee where it's got the cognitive ability to be like, I have to hide, or, bad things will happen to me. It's not like you're hunting a deer or doing anything like that. So just going out in a group and just acting benign and making some racket and banging on trees. I mean, did they come in and check you out to be like, wow, these people aren't doing anything? Let's go see what they're up to. Does that work? Or, I'm of the aspect where it's like, you got to be two people and just go do your own thing and let them find you. Maybe. I don't know. And I think an expedition would be interesting. I've never been on one. I'd like to see how it works. I know some people seem to say that it works for them, and stuff like that. But I'm open-minded to just about anything. I think if you're not, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Exactly. You have to yeah, if you're at the point where you hear people say stuff and you're just discounting it because it doesn't line up with what you hold, you're putting yourself in a bad situation. You got to be aware of what's being reported, even if it doesn't line up with your stuff. But Nate, I mean, I thank you so much for coming forward, sharing what you experienced that day and that night in the Roscommon, Michigan area. It's just, I almost like, some people consider them, I think, Class B encounters, but sometimes those are even more interesting, or as interesting, I think, than, if you've had a visual. But I just want to say thank you for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything else that you wanted to share before we end out our time.
No, I'm good. I appreciate you giving me in a forum here where I can, talk about this, without having feeling like I'm being going to be ostracized by the end of it. You always have that. You're kind of afraid to tell the whole thing because somebody's going to be dealing like, oh yeah, whatever. There's a huge eye roll, but it's just nice to with like-minded people that have an interest in whether or not this is real kind of stuff or nothing. It's a good thing. I like it.
Absolutely. That's why we do it. That's why I do it, so that people have a place to share and not have to be scared. And yeah, feel free to pass on my info to anyone you've been talking to and wants an area to share as well. Feel free to share my email or whatever you'd like. But thanks again, Nate, for coming on the show, and I appreciate you chatting today.
Hey, no problem. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Just wanted to take a minute to say thank you truly for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Nate's story is one of those encounters that stays with you, not just because of what he heard in the dark, but because of how deeply it shook a lifelong hunter to his core. So huge thanks to Nate for bravely sharing his experience from Roscommon County and reminding us all that sometimes the wilderness is wilder than we can imagine. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to us on YouTube and hit the bell so you don't miss future episodes, and share this one with a friend who loves a good mystery. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you're following the show, and if you'd be willing to leave a review, it really helps more people find us. And if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot encounter, especially in Michigan, around places like Houghton Lake or Roscommon County, I'd love to hear from you. So email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. And also, don't forget, Sasquatch Summerfest is coming up July 11th through the 12th at Green Waters Park in Oak Ridge, Oregon. Bigfoot Society listeners can snag a 2-day pass for the price of a 1-day admission with code BFS at checkout. So get your tickets now at www.sasquatchsummerfest.com. So thanks again for being part of the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, trust your gut, keep your head on a swivel, and keep your eyes open for what might be calling, and see you in the woods.